Wow, 10 years. Can you believe it's been 10 years since I posted my very first video on YouTube with absolutely no idea what I was doing, using a borrowed camera, having my son edit and upload the video, because all I knew how to do at that time was to weave. And I just knew that I wanted to share the weaving and give a little bit back to the wonderful fibre arts community. And that's how all of this started. And now it's been 10 years. And I think it's fair to say that YouTube has completely changed my life. It's allowed me to achieve so many things that I only ever dreamed of. When I started, I had little kids running around. If you watch some of the original videos, you'll probably hear them in the background playing and carrying on. I was a homeschooling, stay-at-home mum. My husband was working full-time. Our lives were just so different. And fast forward to now, where I get to do this full-time for a living. My husband is retired from his job and works with me. And our children are almost all grown up. It's just amazing, the passing of time. It doesn't matter how many people tell you that it's all going to go quickly. It really does. And now at this point of time, I have my own spacious studio. Well, it was spacious when I moved in, but I just have this habit for filling it up with things, like weaving looms. Did I mention I've got another weaving loom on the way? We'll talk about that later. But yes, it was YouTube that started it all. It was from YouTube that the demand for a weaving school grew and allowed me to make a start with some foundation members who supported me through my first year. And I didn't know whether I would be able to get through that first year and pay my platform hosting fees and all of those kind of things. It was really uncharted territory for me. And now at this point, there are almost 15,000 registered students at the online weaving school. It's just magical. And to point out the really obvious, none of this would have happened without all of you watching my videos, going and visiting my weaving school, buying my pattern designs for weaving so that now I'm also a weaving designer. I mean, how does that even happen? It really has been a dream come true. And while YouTube and content creation in general has been a roller coaster, there have been some high highs and some low lows. And even now there's a kind of uncertain future because a lot of the longer term YouTubers like myself are finding that our videos just don't get the views that they once did. It seems that YouTube is really promoting new YouTubers, and some of us oldies, I guess, are feeling a little bit left behind, but this is just, it's another part of the roller coaster. It's never going to be an easy ride, but for me, it's been well worth the many, many hours that I've put into it. So at the filming of this video, I have over 400 videos here on YouTube. I don't know the exact number. I have over 100 classes at the online weaving school, and I'm not sure how many patterns and ebooks that I have, but let's say around 30. And again, all of this comes back to all of you watching and supporting me in any way that you can. And I appreciate that so much. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about what's happening today. What am I doing here? What are we going to be looking at today? What's our purpose here together today? Well, for the 10-year celebration of this month, 10 years on YouTube, I wanted to show you all my appreciation with a free project and hopefully a really fun project. I'm actually wearing it right now. So this is I'm calling it the Mobius shawl because it is a continuous shawl that has a twist and then it has a join at the back. And this was woven on a rigid Heddle loom. So there are a few specifics that I did want to mention before we actually launch into the video class. The first thing I want to mention is that in the duration of the video, I do repeat myself a number of times, especially about the links where you can get the pattern and different options that you have for the pattern. I actually did that on purpose. Some people are going to find that annoying, but what tends to happen is, especially with a really long video like this, it is quite a long tutorial, is that people kind of pop in and out. They pop in at different times and they will miss things that I've said. And so I will get questions about things that I've already said. So rather than me constantly saying, you know, I said about this in the video, or go to this point in the video to get the further information, I'm just putting the information, dotting it throughout the video, so that hopefully even if people skip sections or they drop in or drop out here and there, that they get all the information, and then that's less questions for me. It's a little bit less frustrating. The next thing that I wanted to mention that is really important is that the pattern, there are two versions of the pattern for this shawl. There is a basic pattern, and that's completely free, and there is a deluxe pattern, and that is not free. However, it will be free to members of the online weaving school and the channel members here, the Kindred Weavers, because if you're not aware, I do have a membership for this YouTube channel now. It's separate to the online weaving school memberships, okay? It's a totally different thing. It's for people who want to support me here on YouTube. So if you are in the Kindred Weavers group already, then you will be getting the deluxe version of this pattern for free. And if you are a member of the online weaving school, you will also get the deluxe version of this pattern for free. Now, my aim is to send this pattern out to all of you members. I'm going to miss some of you. I know it's just going to happen because it always happens. One thing is that a lot of you on the online weaving school, you opt out of receiving emails from me, and so I can't actually contact you. So if I send out a blanket email, it'll go out to everyone who has opted in for emails. Okay, so if you don't get this pattern for free in your email box and you're a member of either Kindred Weavers or the online weaving school, please feel free to reach out to me so that I can send it over to you, okay? It's not unfortunately, it's not a simple process. Send out a free pattern to over 1,000 people. It's just not simple. But we'll try and get it done. We'll do our best, okay? I'll do my best, and we'll see how we go. So a little bit more about the basic and the deluxe pattern. So the basic pattern is going to be available on my website. You'll see the link down below. I'm going to put a ton of links down below. So if you're looking for anything associated with this project, go to the description box below and check out all the links. I'll try and have everything there for you, but you can definitely pull me up if I miss anything. So the basic pattern will be on my website. It's not a downloadable printable pattern, but the information is there. The deluxe pattern is a downloadable printable pattern. It has step-by-step instructions, color photos. It has all the calculations that you need, all the instructions you need along with the video. But it also has two other options. One is for a full shawl project, and one is for a scarf project. If you feel that you don't want to weave a Mobius shawl, then I have provided those instructions for those of you. So it's a choice for you. If you think that you'll be fine using the basic instructions along with the video, go for it. If you feel like you need a little more instruction, then the deluxe pattern is for you, and it's an extra way for you to support me if you feel led to do that. So check the links below, decide which level of pattern is going to be best for you by looking at those links, and then you can get started on the actual video tutorial. Well, I'm really excited about sharing this with you today. I hope that you really love the project, and I know that you're really going to enjoy weaving it, and I will see you right at the end of the tutorial. We're going to be using the direct warping method for this shawl, nice and easy. So I'm just measuring my warp length to make sure I always measure from the apron rod fully extended. That is not a rule at all, it's just what I do, And if you follow any of my classes, any of my patterns, that's what I always do for measuring. So I'm measuring to my warping board there. I've got my warping board because it allows me to customize the length of the warp a little bit more, because I can clamp it where I need it on the table and measure to the pegs and really get them at the right length that I want them for. So don't forget that the calculations, the basic calculations and the basic pattern is available on my website, and that will be linked down below. Don't forget to access that. And of course, if you would prefer to have the deluxe version, I will also give you the link to that. This is just a little tip. If you get annoyed at your apron rod wagging about as you're trying to warp, it's very easy to just grab some, what I'm using here is some t-shirt yarn, but something stretchy. You can cut up old t-shirts to do this, or there is t-shirt yarn available as well. I happen to have some left over from another project, so it's just perfect for me. I use this stuff all the time. And I'm just tying up the apron rod to the top of the heddle there, and that's going to hold the apron rod out for me. Depending on the loom that you have, you may have a different way of doing this. So I had already started warping, but it was just annoying me because it's a full length, a full width warp. The apron rod was annoying me the way it was moving around so much, and also it can change your tension and how your yarn's going around the peg at different rates and that kind of thing. So I'm going to continue to warp now. So I'm just starting from one side and going to the other. We're just warping for plain weave today. This is done on a plain weave threading. So it's very simple. If you are familiar with plain weave, and if you've woven on a rigid Heddle loom before, then it's more than likely that you have done plain weave. And so we thread up for plain weave, we get our warp all organized, and then the Danish medallions are done with a form of pickup, like finger controlled weaving. So it's pretty cool. And for that reason, you can have a bit of autonomy over this project. Like if you don't like the particular way that I have designed it, the medallions, you can always change that to make it more what you would prefer. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller, you can space them further apart. There are lots of options for a project like this. I opted to alternate rows of smaller medallions with larger medallions, and I opted to do that for the entire piece. But admittedly, that takes a while. So if you want a shorter term project, you might consider doing things a little bit differently so that you're not weaving so many rows of Danish medallions. But really, I think it was worth it for the end result to have a full shawl of Danish medallions. They just turned out beautifully. So I'm moving all my threads. At the moment, I'm just taking them through the slots and I'm placing them over the peg that is nearest to that side of the loom. And then once I start to move across more towards the middle and the other side of the loom, then I'll swap to another peg that aligns more directly with that side of the loom. And that just helps you to prevent yarn wastage, and it just keeps everything really nice and neat. When we get to the opposite side, we can tie off the yarn, and then we finished that part of the warping. If any of this is beyond you, I do have a beginner rigid Heddle class that is my most popular class of all. I'll link to that down below, and I recommend that you start with that to get to know your loom if all of this is a bit too quick or not detailed enough for you. I'm putting some choke ties near the ends of my warp loops just to keep them in place. It's a slightly longer warp, so I want to keep everything nice and neat as I begin to wind on. So you see I ended up using 3 pegs for this wider warp. And I just slip them off the pegs and they're fine to just sit on the table so that I can organize the next step. Okay, so I can remove those stretchy ties. They're not going to be needed now. They held my apron rod steady and did their job very nicely. You'll want to have your paper or whatever you're using for a separator close by. I like to do 1 full rotation of the warp before I start inserting my separators, and I am using this brown craft paper that comes on a roll. You'll find that linked in the description below. I get asked about it all the time, about the sort that I use, and the weight of the paper does matter, so check out that link below. If you are interested, it comes in all different widths, and you can also cut it to size. So I like to just wind that in manually a little bit so that it holds, and then I can go around to the front of the loom and give that warp a bit of a tug to help the paper settle in. And also doing this, leaving the warp out long, but tugging it, putting it under a bit of tension, also ensures that your threads aren't getting snagged or tangled. So what I'm doing today is the yank and crank method. Which is just one of the many ways of warping, but it's one that I like to use, especially if I have a wider and a longer warp. So I'll keep going with this warping, and I just do a couple of, just keep moving that wheel and pulling the paper and pulling on the yarn and getting everything settled in nice and firmly. Time to cut my loops because my warp has been wound on far enough that I need to now consider getting ready for threading. How long you leave your warp for threading is up to you. It's a comfort level thing. How much yarn do you like to have to thread through, shorter or longer? It's up to you. Experiment and see what suits you best. I like it a little bit longer, but not so longer that it's going to cause me troubles and get tangly. So I'm going to be threading every hole and leaving 1 thread in every slot. Personally, I start threading on the left and I thread I thread to the left. So the hole to the left. Some people thread the hole to the right, and that is fine also. And so I'm just going to go across the whole warp, leaving 1 in the slot and 1 in the hole, and I'm making sure that my threads aren't twisted or holding each other down in any way. That's part of having a really nice, neatly rolled on warp, is you can see exactly how the threads are telling you that they want to be threaded because they're lying in that particular order on the back beam. And so if your warp is really neat, you'll be able to see very clearly, and the threading will be easy because you won't have any twisted threads or any problems like that. When you get to the other side and you're completely threaded, what I am doing is I'm removing the very last slot thread, and this means that on both sides of the heddle I will have threads threaded in holes, and that's going to allow me to have really consistent edges as I weave, because they'll be under the same amount of tension. Now I'm going to tie directly onto my apron rod at the front, and I'm doing about 1 inch bouts of warp, separating them in half, taking them underneath the apron rod, each tail, and then bringing up either side, tying over once, and then tying over one more time, and that's a surgeon's knot, and that's going to hold there until I'm ready to come and retension again. So when I'm happy with all of my tie-ons and that I'm happy that it's all tensioned nicely, I'm going to put in some waste yarn as a separator at the front. That's going to help to bring the warp together. You can use cardboard sticks as well. They're not quite as effective as waste yarn, but they still work just fine, and then you don't have to fiddle around with waste yarn. But today I decided to use a whole heap of waste yarn. So just open up one shed, put the waste yarn in. I repeat it over, like double or triple it over a few times so that it's a little bit thicker. I beat that, and then I go into the next shed, feed the next lot of waste yarn in, and do the same thing again. And I do that until I'm happy with how the warp is looking, because you'll notice when you have those groups tied on that they will be keeping to their separate kind of groups. So you have little gaps in your warp initially. And so putting this waste yarn in or putting cardboard sticks in helps to bring those gaps together so that when you start weaving, there are either no or very minimal gaps. Almost time to start weaving, but first we've got to load our stick shuttles, and we're going to be using 2 stick shuttles for this project. You will find the details for that in your pattern. And so first I'm loading with the yarn that I used for the warp. It's the exact same yarn, and that's going to become my background weft. And then I'm going to load my second shuttle, and that's going to be my pattern weft. This is a thicker yarn, it's a different color. So this is kind of your accent yarn. So make sure that it has enough contrast with your background yarn and your warp yarn, which should be the same, to make those Danish medallions really stand out. All right, so we are ready to weave, and we're going to start out with some plain weave using my background weft, as I was talking about before. So that for me, it's the exact same yarn as my warp yarn, which is that beautiful purple wool that I'm using. And I'm just going to work some plain weave according to the pattern. So this is going to give me a base to work on, but it's also going to give me a little border at the start of my shawl, because I am going to be seaming this shawl at the end to make it into a Mobius shawl. So I want to have a little bit of leeway for seaming, and that can be in the form of this plain weave border. And I'll work the same at the end of the shawl, and then by the time I've sewn the seam, I won't have to be trying to match up Danish medallion pattern, and I won't have to worry about the Danish medallions being a bit thicker, making the fabric a bit thicker. My sewing machine doesn't like that so much. So doing this little bit of plain weave is like a little bit of insurance for the seam. So if you're following the deluxe pattern and you've decided to do either the full length shawl or the scarf, you could still do these plain weave borders at the beginning and the end, but it's completely up to you. I personally like the way they look on a scarf, a little bit of plain weave to start with. I feel like the contrast between it and the Danish medallions just, you know, once the medallions actually start, after a little bit of plain weave, they really pop. It just kind of brings them to life. I think so. But as I've already pointed out, this pattern is very customizable, so you do you. Most important thing is that you enjoy the process and that you're happy with what you've woven when you finish. Friends, we're ready to start on the Danish medallion sequence now. How I have my loom set up after I finish my 1 inch of plain weave with the background weft or the plain weave weft, I have my shuttle on the left, so my last shed was a down shed, and that means that my next shed is going to be an up shed. But I'm going to actually put my background weft aside for a moment, and we're going to bring in our pattern weft and let it have its turn. So I'm going into the up shed. That is my next shed because my last shed was a down shed. And I'm going to take my pattern weft through just for one pass at this point. Leave a bit of a tail on the left and beat that down. Okay, so obviously our next shed is the down shed, and I'm going to tuck that pattern weft tail all the way over this side into that shed, just about 3 warp threads deep. Tuck it in, and then that will get beaten in as I continue. Now I'm going to temporarily put aside my pattern weft, so I'll just put it over to the side, and I'll bring back the plain weave weft. I'm going to weave 6 picks of this. Starting in the down shed. Now if you know me, normally I'm in the up shed when I'm going from left to right, but obviously we just use that shed for the pattern weft, so things are going to mix up a little bit, so just keep count of the number of picks that you're doing so you don't get confused. So now I'm into the up shed. That was my first background weft pick, because our Danish medallions have to be filled with something. So we're filling them with this plain weave weft. That's the second, into the down shed. Third, into the up shed. Fourth. Down shed again for the 5th. And then up shed for the 6th pick of the plain weave weft. And now we prepare to do something different. Okay, so I'll go into the down shed because that's where I'm up to. I'll take this plain weave weft, and again I'm going to put it to the side and bring the pattern weft back in so that we can start to make our medallions. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is bring this pattern weft into the shed that we've got open, which is the down shed. Now for me, I'm right-handed, so I've set it up so that I can start making my medallions from the right-hand side. And that's why I wove my pattern weft in from the left so that it would be sitting at the right, waiting for me. Now we are going to be weaving the medallions in bunches of 6, but initially for the 2 borders on either side, the numbers got a little bit screwy, and so I had to just accommodate for that, which is something that I do all the time. So the very first bunch of medallions on the right is going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to be 4 warp threads, and on the left, when we finish up the other side, there will be 5. But all through the middle, we're going to be doing bunches of 6. Now, if what I'm saying sounds like gobbledygook to you at the moment, don't worry. We are going to explain everything, and of course you'll have your pattern to follow along as well. So first of all, I want to count off 1, 2, 3, 4 warp threads in my down shed. So I'm in an open shed, and I'm going to bring my shuttle under and through. This is going to create a loop at the side, a little loop here where we've done our little plain weave in between. And it's also going to give us some yarn to play with, which is an essential part of weaving Danish medallions. Now for the next part, you can use a crochet hook, and I also use a threading hook. This is the Ashford double threading hook. It's got the reed hook on one end, the hole hook on the other. Either of these will work. I'm going to try my crochet hook, but I feel like this one might be a little bit large for the purpose. It's usually better to have something a little bit smaller. This one is a size 10, which is a 5.75 mils. It's just what I happen to have in the studio. So I'm going to give it a shot, but I've got a feeling it's going to be a little bit big, and that can be cumbersome. All right, let's have a look at, let's have a close-in look at what we're going to do here. Okay, so the next step is to find the place where our shuttle came out of the warp, and you can see it fairly plainly because you've got that weft tail there, and you can even kind of fold that back to really zero in on the place where you came through. And you can also count the number of threads because you can see them here as little dots. So we were counting for 4 warp threads. So that means that I'm going to start here right underneath the 4th thread. My crochet hook is way too big. Okay, I'm going to swap. So use a smaller crochet hook and you'll be fine. And maybe later on I can find myself a smaller crochet hook because I've got a whole set of them. They're just not with me at the moment. So what we're going to do is go underneath that 4th pattern weft thread right there, which is directly below where we came out of the shed. I'm going to bring my hook up and I'm going to grab on to that thread. Make sure that you've got a bit of thread sort of feeding off your shuttle. So you've got a little bit of excess hanging about because you're going to need that to pull through. Okay, and then pull that through that space, and then we have a loop. What we want to do then with the loop is we want to take our shuttle through that loop. Okay, so here comes the shuttle going through the loop. And then I want to pull that through so that it pulls the excess tight. Now here you've got a decision to make because you as the weaver get to decide how tight you want these Danish medallions to be. Do you want really tight cinched in Danish medallions, or do you want kind of looser effects like this? There's no wrong or right here. Either one can be done. Only I wouldn't leave like a gigantic loop sitting on the work like this. You know, I wouldn't leave something like that hanging off because that's not going to be useful. It's going to catch on things. You need it to be somewhat utilitarian. And so you could leave it as loose as that. You could tighten it up a little, or you could tighten it up a lot. So see what happens when you tighten it up a lot? It pulls right in so that you then have some bare threads below and you'll have some above as well. And so that's a choice that you as the weaver can make. It's a matter of preference, so you do you. I'm just showing you how to do them. And we are going to be doing some different sized medallions, and you'll be seeing other ways to do that as well. All right, so that was our 4 threads there. Remember, we just wanted 4 for the border threads, but we're actually going to use more threads next time. So now I'm going to count off 6 threads. And I think it would be useful if I had my hook to do that, and also perhaps putting my finger behind because everything's pretty dark in here. Dark threads, dark floor, dark room doesn't make for a great combination. Okay, so let's count off 2, 4, 6. All right, I'll put my finger back in there as a placeholder. We've already used those first 4, so I'm going to leave those first 4 alone now. And then I'll bring my pattern shuttle back again, take it underneath, take it through. Okay, now you can see our next medallion forming already. I'll grab my hook, not my too thick crochet hook. And then we want to do the same thing. We're going to go underneath the pattern weft that aligns with where we came out of the shed. So just straight down, and there we are. I'm going to pop my hook in there. I'm going to bring it through to the back, and I'm going to grab that pattern weft and bring it through, and try not to grab any other threads at the same time. Bring the loop through. So once you have the loop, you can kind of use your fingers instead of the hook if you want to. So then I've got my loop, and then I just need to take my shuttle through that loop. So the loop is at the top, the weft, the pattern weft is at the back, and the shuttle comes through from underneath. That then catches in the loop. We pull it and we make it as tight as we want. So I'm going to tighten mine up. And there we go, we have another medallion. Isn't that nifty? It's so cool. All right, let's do another one. And then I'll show you how we're going, once I get to the other side, how that's going to look. All right, so we came out here. So I'm going to count off 2, 4, 6, another 6 warp threads. And I'm going to go underneath them with the pattern weft. Take that through. Bring my hook in. And see where I came out of the shed and line it up with the pattern weft that is corresponding. It's pretty easy to see. And we do use, you know, a different color and a different thickness of pattern weft, so it's pretty easy for us to see what's what. Okay, there's my loop. Now I'm going to take my shuttle through that loop and pull it up. Nice and tight, and then you can see the medallions really coming together. So I'll keep going doing 6s across, and then we'll meet at the other side so that we can see what we do for the last one. Here we are on the opposite side, and so as I mentioned before, we're going to do a bunch of 5 on this side to finish off because that's all we have left. So we're just going to take that through as we did before for the other medallions. Pull that through, and then I'm going to grab my hook and insert in that bottom weft again. This time I'm going to pull the pattern weft from the edge. Pull that through. So then I have my loop, and then I'll bring my shuttle through to finish off that last medallion. Oh, I've knotted a bit there, so if that happens, just pull the knot out. And there we go, then we have a nice finished medallion for the edge, and we're going to leave that pattern weft there on that side, but bring the plain weave weft back in for the next part. Our first row of Danish medallions is complete, so we need to change. For me, that's going to be to the up shed, and my plain weave weft is on the left where it's just been hanging out waiting for me. And we're going to weave a little bit of plain weave before we do the next row. And the next row is going to be a little different as well. Some of my wool's sticking here. Okay. Okay, so that's 4 rows that we've done. Now I'm going to bring the pattern weft back in. And again, this plain weave weft can just go to the side. I'm going to get that to catch on the edge of the plain weave weft. So 1 row through, from left to right. Okay, and then beat. So that's our next row of pattern weft, ready to go for the next lot of medallions. But first we've got to weave that chunk of plain weave in between. So I'm going to put the pattern weft over to the side. Now this time, instead of doing the 6 rows that we did, we're going to make taller medallions. And so I'm going to do 12 rows of plain weave. This is of course optional. You have the information in your pattern and in this video to do your own variation if you want to. So you could, for example, choose to just keep doing rows of this number and keep them of the same size. You could decide how many rows you want in between each one. So you could keep doing 6 rows and then a bit of plain weave, 6 rows, or you could stack them on top of each other if you want. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with Danish medallions. You could do them as a border and then do a whole lot of plain weave and then do some more as a border if you don't want to like fill in your whole piece with them. That can be not just a visual decision, but also it's time consuming making these medallions. You know, we're making them one by one right across the warp, and it's a fairly wide warp as well. So you might not want to invest that much time if you're going to pattern your entire shawl with Danish medallions. Obviously that's being done row by row. So that's going to be a bit of a time investment. And also just a preference. If you find that you really enjoy doing the medallions, then you won't mind doing a whole lot of them. If you find that you like the effect, but you find it takes a little bit long for you, then you might want to go for a border option and just have borders on your shawls and a whole lot of plain weave. Either way is fine. In the deluxe pattern that I have available, I have some of these suggestions, as well as measurements for a Danish medallion scarf instead of an entire shawl, a Mobius shawl. And then I've also got the calculations for a full-length shawl. If you wanted to do a full-length shawl with a fringe, for example, instead of making it a Mobius shawl. So options are there. You can check out the deluxe pattern. The basic pattern is free, and obviously the video is free. The deluxe pattern is not free. And so I've done that as a way for extra options for people who want extra options and extra detail in the instructions, because the basic pattern is, as it sounds, basic. If you want something more detailed, if you want to think about more options that you could do according to your loom size, whatever it is, you might want to go for the deluxe pattern. That way you get to support me as well, which I really appreciate. Now, because I've been chatting so much, I've completely lost count of how many picks I've done here. Let's see. Okay, so I've done 10. 2 more. Okay, so that's 12. So now I'm ready to do my next lot of medallions, starting in the downshed, putting this plain weave weft aside again and bringing back the pattern weft. Now we're ready for the next row, which is going to be a little bit different as far as the numbers go, just for a bit of fun and a bit of extra interest. So again, I'm going to accommodate at the borders, at the edges, for a different amount of threads, but for the main part we'll be doing 12 threads. This first side though, which is the right hand side for me, and I'm in the downshed, we're going to do 10 warp threads. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this is just the initial side thread, edge thread, and pull that through as we did before. So the process is exactly the same. I'm going to line up where my weft came out of that warp. I'm going to go down and see which pattern weft it is that I'm going underneath. Then I'll take my hook through. I'll grab that thread and then I'll pull a loop through. Okay, pull that up, and then I'll take my shuttle through from the right to the left, and I will pull that up tight. Okay, so you can see this time that our medallion is quite a different size to before, and that's the whole point, to give it a different effect. Okay, so now we've done that initial 10, we can count off 12 next time. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I'm coming up here. Grab my hook and line it up with the correct thread. Pull that thread through, pulling a loop. And then my shuttle can go through. And then I'm going to pull it up pretty tight. Okay, great. We can go through and I'll count off the next 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Take that through. Find the corresponding pattern thread underneath. Grab it, pull through a loop, and then take the shuttle through and pull it up. You can see how just the same as any finger technique that you do really, that you get a kind of rhythm with it. Once you understand the pattern of what you're doing, you start to, it becomes much easier. You get a rhythm, you get going, you can get faster at it. It seems a little painstaking for at first, but it becomes much easier. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And of course, when we're doing larger medallions, it doesn't take quite as long. As a part of this pattern, we're going to be swapping between these two sizes of medallions to give that kind of visual interest of large, then small, then large, then small. I like the way that looks. Okay, through to the next one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So is this making sense to you now at this point? Hopefully it is. I do also have a Danish medallions class at the weaving school. It shows you like quite a few different ways that you can do medallions, including inserting beads, which is a pretty cool technique. And, you know, just working the different sizes and doing different things with it. As I said, there are lots of options for this technique. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And you don't just have to make medallions, you can make other shapes as well. That might be something that you are interested in researching if you like this technique. Okay. Yes, the larger medallions do go much faster. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Getting close to the other side. So again, we'll have a look at how we're going to handle that when we get there. So if you weren't doing a repeating pattern, like bringing your pattern weft back in constantly, then you would be wanting to cut your pattern weft at the edges. If you say you were doing a border of these and then you weren't weaving them again for quite some time, you would cut the weft at the edge and weave that in, the pattern weft. Otherwise you would end up with a really long float at your edge that wouldn't look great, and again, it'd be catching on things that would be annoying. It's so funny. I really like these colors, but when I inserted the waste yarn weft at the bottom here, because I just happen to have some lengths of this particular yarn, I thought, oh, those colors look so fantastic. There's like a darker, like a royal blue, and then a more aquamarine blue. And they look so good against the purple. So that now I've got them there, the color that I actually chose for the pattern weft looks a little duller than those colors. But that's a good learning experience too, isn't it? It's like, oh, okay, so I really like these colors with this purple. So that could be a future project. I really like this variegated color as well. It's just having that other color sitting right there looking at me. I'm like, oh, those colors are so nice. All right, we're almost there. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Yeah, so there's 11 on this side. So I'm going to take the shuttle right out the edge. And then I'll pop underneath the last one here and pull that through as a loop. And then I'll take my shuttle through from the right, make sure that it catches through that loop. And that is another row of medallions done. So that means I can put this beauty aside once more and bring back in my plain weave weft. It also means that I need to change sheds, otherwise I'll weave into the exact same shed that I was just weaving in. And then I can start my plain weave again. So you can see here how you could make a decision on what you're going to do with your medallions, whether you're going to keep them going like this or whether you're going to use them as a border. A really attractive border would be if you had one row of these smaller ones, one row of bigger, and then another row of smaller, separated by the same amount of plain weave that we did here, which was 4 rows. And then, so if you had those 3 repeats of Danish medallions, small, big, small, and then you did a chunk of plain weave, that would look really lovely. So what I'm opting for at this point is to continue my medallion pattern. So to do 4 of the plain weave, and then to commence the smaller medallions once more, and then to just repeat those over and over. And yes, I know it's going to take quite some time, but I really like the way it looks. And if you're going to weave a shawl for yourself or for somebody else, you might as well make it the way you want it, the way you think is most beautiful. If it takes extra time, that's okay. But it depends on your situation. I won't say that I have a whole lot of time on my hands, spare time, but I want to spend the extra time doing this. So that is my current plan. Another cool thing I just thought of that you could do is like an asymmetrical shawl. So you could do, you could do all of your patterning and medallions on one end of the shawl, and then on the other end of the shawl have just plain weave. That would be nice. Okay, so we're back to our pattern weft for the medallions already. So that was 4 picks, yep. Again, I lost count because I was chatting. So I'll put my plain weave weft to the side, bring my pattern weft back in the up shed. Currently, I'm going to need to advance my warp very shortly too. Okay, that's my first one, and then into the down shed. So I'll put this pattern weft aside again. And then I'll start my plain weave rows. My plain weave rows are going to be 6 rows because remember I want to do the smaller medallions again. I'm going to repeat those. So in comes the pattern weft again. Do you want to see me do a smaller row from this angle? Why not? Let's do it. If you have got it, if you're right with it, then you don't need to watch this part. But some of you might appreciate the repetition, hey? All right, so remember on the right-hand side, we started with 4 warp threads. Let me just pause and advance my warp a little. Little and often is the best idea. Okay, and I'm in the down shed and I dropped my threading hook, so I've got to pick that up. Without dislodging my sound equipment and my camera. Very tricky. Okay, so 4, let's start with the 4. Now these are going to seem tiny in comparison to the last lot that we did. Okay, take that through, count in 4 or just line it up visually. You'll get more confident at lining it up as you go. Pull up the loop, grab my shuttle and take that through. Then I'm going to pull that. Now for the next lot, we're doing 6, remember, not 4. So 2, 4, 6, and that's going to continue across until we get to the other side, and then we'll finish off with 5, I think it was. Line it up and pull through the loop. Sometimes you'll get little snags and stuff. If you don't manage to grab the yarn nice and cleanly with the threading hook, sometimes it splits the plies a little bit. So that's something to watch out for. 2, 4, 6. Don't forget all the yarn, the extra information that you're going to need will be in the pattern, either the basic or the deluxe, depending on how much extra info you would like. Okay, 2, 4, 6. And the great news is, if you're a member of the online weaving school, you will find this pattern for free, the deluxe pattern for free, within the membership group. So make sure you check that out if you are a member. Otherwise, the deluxe pattern is available from my design store, kellycasanovadesigns.com, and the free pattern is available on my website, kellycasanovaweavinglessons.com. 2, 4, 6. Sorry to have to send you all over the internet just to get your pattern, but that's just the way it goes. Wouldn't it be nice to have everything in one place and you would never have to look for it? So I'd be interested to know at this point what you're thinking. Because you're watching me in real time, you're seeing, you know, what sort of time frame this can take. Are you thinking that you will do like some feature borders? Are you thinking you'll do your whole shawl in the medallion repeats that I'm doing? Are you thinking you'll get the deluxe pattern and go for the scarf or the full length shawl? I'll be interested to know. Of course, you can always change your mind once you're actually weaving. You can't change your mind about turning a scarf into a shawl, but you can, once you've picked your project, the Mobius shawl, full length shawl, or the scarf, once you've picked that, on the loom, you can choose and change your mind about how you're going to do your medallions. Oh, this bit's coming apart. This bit of yarn, the pliers are splitting. There we go. Yeah, because you might start doing a row of these and then being like, well, I really like the way these smaller medallions look, so I'm going to do my entire piece in the smaller medallions. Or you might like the larger medallions. So you can actually decide after you've started weaving. You don't have to commit to it. Another thing I'm going to have probably on the website is some substitute yarn suggestions, because I'm using some of my favourite Australian yarns. I know they're not accessible to everyone. So I'm going to have some other possible suggestions on my site. So make sure you check that out. That'll be in the same place that the free basic pattern is at. And of course I'll have the link for that down below. Having a bit of trouble with this yarn splitting, which either means I need to be more careful or it's just the yarn. It's probably a bit of both. This yarn does have a lot of plies. I think this is an 8 ply and it's the variegated colour, so it's been plied in that specific way to get that combination of colours, which is really beautiful. It's kind of a seascape colourway, I would think. And here is my finished piece off the loom, and I have wet finished it and I have dried it according to the pattern. So if there's any gaps in the video, make sure you check your pattern because the instructions will be there. And now I'm just cutting off any of the tails that I had from starting and finishing weft threads. Got a few tails throughout, so I'm just going to cut them off with sharp scissors. I cut them very close to the fabric, but I'm also very careful not to cut the fabric itself because that would be a tragedy. So this is a Mobius shawl, and we need to actually put a twist in the fabric for it to become a Mobius shawl. And so to do that, we just lay the fabric out flat and then twist it over. So then when you are bringing your short ends together to meet, you will have a twist in the fabric. So we are bringing those short edges together, but not right to the edges like you would for a normal seam, because this is a different type of seam, a flat felled seam. And the idea is to reduce bulk and have a seam that looks very attractive, but also looks, it doesn't attract a lot of attention, so it blends in really well with the piece. So I'm measuring about 3/4 of an inch from the top, and I'm pinning along to keep that in place. So you want one edge sitting down below the other edge, and that's around 3/4 of an inch. If you find it hard to get the exact measurements, my advice is don't worry too much, don't agonize over it. Just do your best and it will turn out well anyway. That's my motto with sewing anyway. It works pretty well for me. Okay, so once we're all pinned, we can take that to the sewing machine. I'm just going to sew a straight stitch, and I'm going to sew it on top of or very close to the shortest edge. So the one that's sitting down below, that's the one we want to sew on, and pretty close to the edge. I'll give that a good press. And then I fold down the top edge towards that sewn edge. This part's a little bit tricky, especially if you're using something like wool. If you're using cotton, it's easy to iron that down and keep the crease there, but wool is a bit more difficult. I do have actually a tutorial for this method that is really clear, and I'm going to link that down below. It shows the steps a bit more clearly than this video does. And I also use cotton in that video, so you can really see everything. This portion of the video is a bit dark as well. I know it's a little bit hard to see. So you fold that edge down, you press it down with an iron as best you can. Make sure you use the appropriate iron setting for your piece. If you're using wool, you need to use the wool setting so you don't scorch your weaving. And then once that is ironed and the crease is in there, I'm going to fold over that little edge and iron that down as well. I feel like you'd be much better off going to that other tutorial that I've mentioned to see exactly what I mean here. It's so much clearer. But I'm just folding that top edge down, and when I do that, it goes over the top of the first seam that we made, but it doesn't like double up on the seam, and that's how you reduce the bulk. So I'm just doing that carefully, and then take that to the sewing machine and sew that down. It seems like a bit of a process, but it's actually pretty simple and straightforward, and it's really worth it for the kind of seam that you get. So I'm just again doing a straight stitch, and I'm stitching close to that edge in order to stitch it down. And there we have it, a beautiful new shawl. You can wear this in a real variety of ways, depending on your own preferences, but isn't that just beautiful? And of course, if you did the full length shawl or the scarf, this is going to be equally beautiful. It's just a striking piece. I think it's a bit of a conversation piece, really. I wouldn't be surprised if you wore this out and people asked you about it. And then you can see the lovely Danish medallions. You see why the contrast in the yarns is important. Here's another way that you can wear it just as a full length Mobius shawl. You can wear it as a wrap around your shoulders. You can put the straight edge at the front so that the twist is at the back. You can double it up as a kind of cowl around your neck and shoulders, or you can wear it as a garment like this. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that this is a project that you're very interested in weaving on your rigid Heddle loom. And I hope that after today, there are going to be a whole lot of Mobius shawls out there. Again, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough for all the support you've given me over these past 10 years. Who knows what the next 10 years will bring, but I hope that we will all still be here sharing weaving information and just the joy of weaving together. And until next time, happy weaving.